everyone, Megan Olivi here. I'm joined by Sean Shelby, and today we are talking about the watch list for UFC 210, which takes place in Buffalo. This is an incredibly stacked card. The main event is a rematch people have been waiting for in that light heavyweight division. The champ Daniel Cormier versus Rumble Johnson. The first fight, Daniel Cormier took some solid shots from Rumble, but he ended up getting a finish. So what, if anything, do you think DC needs to do differently in this fight?
Well, he's gonna, I think, do exactly what he did before, just weather the storm. He's got probably more stamina, which he proved in the first fight. He has more stamina. Get through that first barrage, get out of the first round, and the longer the fight goes, it's better for him. Rumble is obviously so explosive and so dangerous. He will carry that power throughout the fight. I think the wrestling of Cormier is really his bread and butter and what he's going to use to win.
Do you think there'll ever be an Anthony Johnson fight where we don't question his cardio?
Well, I mean, he's just built that way. Somebody that explosive, I think just normally you are, I'm going to say you have problems, but you have trade-offs. His explosiveness, you know, the expense is probably the stamina. And I'm not saying that Cormier is guaranteed to win, because obviously that one-shot power can change everything.
The next fight on the card is a really fun fight in the middleweight division, Chris Weidman and Gegard Mousasi. These are two fighters that are always fun to watch. They never seem to really have boring performances.
Yeah, and you know, Weidman is trying to get back on track and get back to his championship ways. But, you know, I've always thought Mousasi was kind of the dark horse of any division he's in. He is so good at what he does, just such an amazing, complete fighter, and dangerous in so many ways. I've always thought he's been highly underrated. I don't care where you put him on the top 15 ranking. I thought he's always been highly underrated. In many ways, this is a more dangerous fight than the Yoel fight, and I think that he matches up really well with Weidman in every area.
Do you feel like Chris has an extra load of pressure on his back, because no one wants to lose three in a row in the UFC, and as a former champion, to lose 3 in a row, that's a big slide for someone to take.
Sure, but I mean, if you look back at, once you get into the top 15, you're fighting nothing but killers, time in and time out. And so losing 3 in a row is a great possibility when you're in Chris's position.
Let's move on to a fight in the welterweight division. Thiago Alva is going back to 170, taking on Patrick Cote. This is kind of a fight between two guys who have been veterans. They've been in the game for a long time. What do you think when you see this matchup?
Yeah, this is kind of I didn't want to say old school throwback, but it's two perennial top 15 guys. Cote's outside of that now, but he's always been one of the top guys for us, and it's a fight that could have been made 7 years ago, you know, and it's happening today. They've changed a little bit. I think even Cote is a little bit more dynamic than he used to be, and I think that's what comes with being a super veteran like himself. I don't know what's going to happen in this fight, but it's a fun throwback fight.
This is just like a fun one for the card, right? Like, this is on there because you know it's going to be entertaining?
Sure, I think so. On paper, it's definitely entertaining. I always say that. It's two guys that are primarily strikers, super veterans, and I mean, I think it's almost an even money fight.
One that should be really fun at 155 pounds is Ill Will Brooks versus Charles do Bronx Oliveira. These two are really fun fighters. Will gets really fired up for his matchups. Charles is kind of like this low-key, mellow guy before he goes out there to perform, but they both go out there and they leave it all on the line. Do you feel like in this matchup between Will and Charles that with an impressive performance or a dominant performance, it could kind of catapult them to the top of the division or towards that top 5?
I do think a win over Charles will help Will a lot, because I think he's going to test him. If you get in a fight with Oliveira, you're in a fight.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's a great test for both guys.
And finally, the last matchup we want to talk about today, Kamaru Usman versus Sean Strickland. This is really interesting. Kamaru has 4 UFC appearances and 4 wins. Sean is 5-1 in the octagon. These are two really talented up-and-coming fighters.
These are the next generation type fighters, and I think that neither one of these guys are close to their potential yet. And it's strange in that when you matchmake, you have so many different ways to go. Sometimes you end up putting two really good top prospects, guys you expect to be in the top 10, soon against each other. They actually are so young in the sport, in that a loss, I think, doesn't really affect them long term and could even make them better. And that's the way I look at both of these guys. I don't think a loss really sets either one back too far. and I think that they both are nowhere near their full potential yet.
That's really interesting you say that because of the tear that they are on in the UFC. When you assess each one of them individually, where do you feel like their biggest strengths are currently?
Strickland's just an all-around tough guy. And Usman he's kind of, I don't want to say he's a throwback fighter, but he's a wrestler who, his stand-up is ever improving. His explosiveness is pretty amazing. And if he can harness that, where he's like that old-time guy who uses the wrestling in reverse to stand up, and if he needs to fall back on the wrestling, he can at any moment.
Well, congratulations on putting together another great card. UFC 210 is packed with upcoming prospects, talented veterans. There's a lot on the line for a lot of people. Tune in to UFC 210 on pay-per-view.